Every woman suspects this, but no man ever wants to admit it. And this is that one of the big reasons why a lot of men are scared to commit to their girlfriend is because they don't want to give up the option of having sex with other women later on down the line. That terrifies them. I've had a number of Hey Hero consultations recently with guys who have girlfriends that they like, girlfriends that they could foresee having a future with, but they're not ready to pull the trigger because the thought of never being with any other woman again ever sexually terrifies them. I've even had requests from guys who are single. They don't even have girlfriends yet, but they're worried about this. They're worried about the prospect of future monogamy. Oh my God, my sexual tastes are so varied. How on earth am I ever going to be able to commit to one woman for the rest of my life? When you're in a relationship, things start off really hot and heavy. You're all over each other all the time, but give it a year or two and you very quickly become bored of having sex with her. You're not alone. You're not a freak. This is actually normal. It's called the Coolidge Effect. Have a look at this graph here. This is what I'm going to talk about in this video. Studies like this have been replicated all over the animal kingdom. I think this graph comes from a study to do with mice, but what you're seeing along this axis is the amount of time that it takes for the male to ejaculate, and then on this axis is how many women he is presented with. So you can see that the male is going to ejaculate very quickly so long as he's presented with lots of different females, appealing to his desire for variety and sexual novelty. But if he's forced to just mate with the same female over and over and over again, it takes him longer and longer for him to ejaculate because he's less aroused. From a biological point of view, this makes sense because the evolutionary purpose of his sex drive is to pass on his genes. And if he keeps being presented with the same girl over and over again, he's like, what's the point of this? I've already impregnated her. I need to find somebody who isn't already pregnant with my child and impregnate them. That's the way I can have as many children as possible and be really biologically successful. You've probably heard me reference Genghis Khan before because 1 in 200 people alive on the planet today can trace a lineage to Genghis Khan. He conquered so much of the world and he slept with women everywhere he went. That's why Genghis Khan, biologically speaking, is the most successful man of all time. Come to think of it, he may be the most biologically successful organism of all time, but when men see this graph, it resonates with their experience. Like, yes, I love my girlfriend. She's really, really beautiful, but I've had sex with her hundreds of times already. It's not the same. If you present me with an uglier girl, but she's brand new, I'm going to find her more arousing. And how on earth am I meant to reconcile that with this requirement of lifelong monogamy? Isn't that just going to set me up for misery? I know that I'm not going to find her as attractive in 5-10 years time. So why would I commit to her? I'm just going to be making both of us miserable. Some of you guys might be familiar with this graph of Leonardo DiCaprio. It went around the internet a couple of years ago, and it shows that even though he's getting older, look, the age of the women that he dates basically stays the same. Every couple of years he trades in, for a new model, a new young actress. And I think when men get terrified at this graph and they get terrified, oh, I'm going to get bored, eventually with my partner, this Leonardo DiCaprio lifestyle really starts to appeal to them. Like, yes, I can always be happy. I just need to be so high status and so attractive that I'm always going to have this endless stream of young women that I can sleep with. That's the solution to the Coolidge Effect. I don't mean to laugh. I know that this is actually a serious concern for lots of men, and I'm going to address it. I'm going to explain from my perspective. You don't need to panic as much as you're probably panicking, but let me first just take the opportunity to explain that you don't have anything to be ashamed of for this being a phenomenon in your biology, okay? It's not your fault. There's nothing wrong with you. As a man, it makes complete sense why you would be wired for sexual novelty. The fact that you find a variety of women attractive and you have sexual urges in lots of different directions, that's actually a sign that you're functioning normally, because from an evolutionary perspective, you can understand what would happen to all of the men who don't have that instinct, those genes for sexual variety. Well, they only had sex with the one woman. That's it. They're the only woman that they found attractive. And so they might have some children, but when compared to the men who find 10, 20, 100 women attractive, they're the ones that are going to have more children. And so obviously those genes are going to win out. I mean, that's a massive oversimplification. We have different sexual strategies, and monogamy is absolutely a viable choice. I'm just talking about like the backup strategy, I suppose, just to spread your seed. It's important that you as a man actually have that inside yourself. Unfortunately, that instinct can run at odds with a lot of our structural institutions of monogamy. And there's also people who figured out how to exploit that. Like, I was doing some research for this video, and I found out that when people visit the adult website Pornhub, they on average look at 9 different videos in a session. On average. Where in nature, unless you're like a king or a conqueror, are you ever going to have access to 9 different women during a sexual session? And yet everybody now has that at the click of a mouse. There's just all of these different women. Oh, I want to see her. But 20 seconds later, I get bored. And so I go onto her and onto her. And that instinct for novelty is just getting pushed on so hard. This is actually exacerbating the fear, as a lot of men, while they may have had like this biological root of an instinct for novelty to start off with, they have strengthened it to such a degree by their exposure to adult websites that now the thought of being with one woman just goes against their neurological wiring so diametrically that the thought genuinely sends them into an existential panic. So if this describes you, then please pay attention. I'm going to try and help. I'm going to try and offer an alternative perspective here. So in the first instance, please don't be too ashamed of yourself, okay? Maybe you've been exacerbating it a bit with some online content, but the instinct itself is normal. There's nothing to be ashamed of. I understand it might not feel that way because you don't really feel like this is a topic you can actually discuss with your partner because it's going to be so hurtful. Like, if you're with a great woman, like you really respect your girlfriend, she's wonderful, she treats you really well, she's beautiful, like stunning, like physically she's gorgeous. It can be a lot to actually start that conversation. I'm not as interested in having sex with you as I used to be. I'm kind of interested more in those girls. I can understand if you have a voice inside your head that says, what kind of a scumbag says that to a good woman? I'm going to hurt her feelings so much. What the hell is wrong with me? I understand that it's hurtful. This is not easy to deal with, but this is the biological cards that we've been dealt. And so I actually do recommend speaking to your partner about this. Now, go gentle. Understand this is probably going to be a huge hit to her ego, but if you're going to have a long-term commitment with somebody, you're going to need to be honest with them and bring up the science, bring up the biology, talk about the evolution, confirm that you love her, confirm that you still do find her attractive. It's just that you've got all this evolutionary wiring inside you. You don't really know what to do with it, and you want to talk to her about it, not because you're planning on dumping her or cheating on her to satiate these desires, but so that she can be aware of what it is that you're going through. Because trust me, if it's actually openly acknowledged, if it's something that you can talk about, you're much less likely to make stupid decisions based on the privacy of your own thoughts. By talking about it, you take away its power. It's one of the reasons why I'm so grateful that guys reach out to me on Hey Hero and they talk about this stuff, even if they're embarrassed, even if they're ashamed about it, because actually just taking that step of talking to me or just one of your male friends about this issue can reduce its stigma massively. And then we can actually have an honest, sincere conversation about what to do about this problem. And in case there are any women who are listening to this at the moment and think that this is ridiculous, I'm being childish or I'm being sexist or whatever, I would really encourage you to open your mind. I understand that as a woman, you don't have the Coolidge Effect to nearly the same degree that men do, but that doesn't mean that your value system or your instincts are superior to ours. This is our experience and it's really difficult to deal with. And so rather than coming at us with judgment, please, a little bit of compassion would be a lot more welcome. I can hear some women saying, oh, what, Alexander, you think I should be grateful that men aren't cheating on me? You think I should be grateful that he's not acting on his urges, even though he finds all these other women attractive? Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. And frankly, if you can't understand that that's difficult for men, then you're being sexist. I know that's hard to hear, but really you're being insensitive to the male experience. But it's not like I'm telling men to just indulge their instincts. Hey, the naturalistic fallacy, this is what's natural, so just go and do it. You have complete moral permission. No, absolutely not. People who cheat on their partners are scumbags. And if you listen to the rest of the video, you'll understand that where I'm coming from is not trying to justify male behavior. I'm trying to help the male experience for the benefit of him and also for the benefit of her. So if you're a man and you're coming to me with this problem, I'm scared to commit to my partner because of the Coolidge Effect. I'm scared that I'm going to lose attraction to her. Here's what I'd say to you. In the first instance, do you understand that the dating market sucks? So many guys, when they've been trapped in a relationship for a long time, they feel like the grass is greener on the other side. They think about all these imaginary possibilities that they've given up in the 5 years they've been with their girlfriend, all the women they could have slept with. They think of their girlfriend as the one obstacle in the path of them being this ultimate suave player guy who's just sleeping with different women every single weekend. I'm telling you, that fantasy is delusional. The dating market is brutally rough. Understand what you're giving up. If you have a functional relationship with a good woman who sleeps with you, who's kind to you, you'd be giving that up for dating apps, getting ignored, getting ghosted, getting rejected, putting in 50 times as much effort as the women that you're dating, just trying to get something. And at the end of all of that effort, what you're getting is not that good because, and this is again one of my controversial opinions, it turns out, but the women who do engage with casual sex with men are basically, as a rule, not very high quality. Women have strong instincts guarding against promiscuous behavior. It's harmful for their reputation. They don't want to get pregnant to a man who's not going to provide. Women are, by naturally, the more chaste gender because the consequences of pregnancy are so much bigger for women than it is for men. And so you ask the question, well, what kind of women ignore those instincts or don't have those instincts and just sleep with anybody? The answer is not very high quality women. High quality guys understand this, that when it comes to sexual experiences, it's about quality. It's not about quantity. If you have a sexual experience with a truly amazing goddess of a woman, that's going to mean so much more than 5 sexual experiences with low, trashy, awful women. Now, perhaps you acknowledge that the dating market sucks and that only trashy women are going to be sleeping with you, but still you think, it's too important to me. These are my biological urges. I need to be honest with myself. I need to get back on the dating market. I need to break up with my girlfriend. Well, let me ask you a question that I think you'll probably find quite difficult to answer. Why not sleep with a prostitute? Really? Like, why not just pay women to have sex with you? If that's all this is, if it's just a biological urge and you just need to get it out of your system, why would you need to go into the dating market? There are plenty of women escorts who, for a reasonable price, will give you the time of your life. Now, some of you might say, but I would, except I just have, a problem with that industry. I think it brings up moral concerns, and so I just don't want to support it. Okay, maybe. Maybe that's truly what's going on for you. I would certainly sympathize. I have my own questions about that industry. But beyond that, if all you're really seeking are sexual experiences, why wouldn't prostitutes suffice? If you're sitting there pondering this question and you're thinking, yes, I want to sleep with lots of women, but I wouldn't consider prostitutes, here's what I'll say to you is that the reason that professional women are not going to satisfy your urges is because your urges are not entirely biological. They're psychological as well. And a prostitute is not going to fulfill those psychological urges. I mean, really, if this was just about biology, then you could just engage in some self-pleasure. Just escape into the privacy of your imagination a couple of times a week, imagine a whole bunch of different women and get it out of your system. But lots of men won't do that because for them, the sexual experience is not purely biological, it's psychological. They have something to prove in those experiences. They want validation of their sexual prowess, validation of their masculinity. They want confirmation that women find them desirable. If I pay a woman, that's obviously not going to fulfill that. But if I'm successfully able to seduce a woman and she's filled with crazy hot passion for me, then wow, does that calm my insecurities about myself. I can relax. Oh, look at how awesome I am, as proof by this woman who wants me this badly. I mean, there's a certain logic to it. Sleeping with women is difficult. It's not that easy to convince women to have casual sex with you unless they're really, really trashy. So if you're able to engage in a lot of casual encounters with women, you have succeeded in a reasonably difficult task, and the corresponding self-esteem boost is somewhat justified, but it's fundamentally unsustainable because you haven't actually taken responsibility for your own self-esteem. You're placing responsibility for all of your insecurities on other women, and it's never going to be enough. It's like a drug addict, he shoots into his veins and he gets an incredible high, but it doesn't last. It's not like he's removed his existential pain forever. 6 hours it wears off and he starts craving the next one. That's how men are who use women to escape from their own insecurities. Or maybe it's not even about ego. It's not about your self-esteem. Maybe it's just a distraction. You've had some awful experiences in life. You're very anxious. You're very depressed. You're very traumatized. And when you're in the arms of a new woman, it's new and it's exciting, and temporarily you forget about all of your problems. But the same issue arises there is that distraction is not going to last forever. You'll eventually get bored of her and you'll need another woman, and you're just putting good energy into this black hole of despair. It's never going to fill up. It's never going to solve the issue. I hope what I'm saying is really getting through to guys. Young guys in particular need to hear this, because if you think that your urge towards sex is entirely biological, that's all there is to it, you're kidding yourself. You don't think that sleeping with some gorgeous woman's going to have any impact on your self-identity, how you view yourself, your self-esteem? You think it's going to stay the same? You don't think that part of your urge that drives you to try and meet women, to try and sleep with them, is at least in part driven by that need to prove yourself in some way? I know I might be coming across as a bit harsh here, but I'm really trying to help, because I'm trying to highlight and isolate for you why the Coolidge Effect and sleeping with one woman isn't the big disaster that your brain might be telling yourself that it is. Because if it's true that the desire for sexual novelty is not entirely biologically based, if there's a psychological element to it, then the good news is that you can work on that psychological element and you can free yourself from that fear. You're in a relationship with a great girl, and yeah, biologically you might be a little bit bored of having sex with her, but maybe that's not all that's going on. Maybe you still have unresolved trauma, you still have insecurities, and you feel like you'd get a bigger self-esteem boost sleeping with 5 new women rather than just sleeping with your girlfriend 5 times like you've already done so many times before. But if that's you, the right solution is not to break up with your girlfriend, it's to go and find a therapist. I've done a number of Hey Hero consultations from guys who place the responsibility of their self-esteem on their partner, and specifically in how their partner treats them sexually. As in, I feel insecure, I feel bad about myself, but if you sleep with me right now, then I feel better. It's actually a really horrible thing to do to women, because if she loves you, then she might well comply for a long period of time. But that's a lot of pressure to put on her. You've probably heard the term, he guilted me into sex. And look, maybe sometimes that phraseology is overused, but there's absolutely real situations where men do this. They kind of hold the woman hostage, like, look, I feel so bad about myself. Do you care about me? Because only you can really fix this. You just need to give yourself to me sexually all the time. And women comply. Awful, awful thing to do. Much better to actually take responsibility for those insecurities and to seek independent help. Go away from the relationship. Fix yourself up. Try and find a little bit more equanimity, a little bit more balance, a little bit more self-esteem. And then when you come back to the relationship, you'll be bringing to your sexual experiences that positive, masculine, confident energy rather than that needy, taking energy. I know that this doesn't remove the whole biological concern thing. You're still ultimately going to be suffering because your biology is, craving variety and you're just with the one woman. But trust me, when you remove the psychological element from it, that's going to be a lot easier to deal with. And if you're able to talk to your partner about it and actually grieve, then you're also going to find it's easier to deal with. And there's also something in the sexual experience with a trusted partner that's better, okay? Like, I can understand when you're with somebody new, it's like, wow, crazy stimulus. It's almost like you're on an amphetamine kind of rush, but that can be kind of unpleasant. When you're with a partner who you've been with a number of times, you share your lives together, you love her, she loves you, it's less like an amphetamine rush. It's more just like a mellow kind of vibe. It can be sweet and relaxing and safe, and that has its own appeal. I know a lot of guys are really skeptical about what I just said. They're like, that's not how my sexuality is wired, Alex. It's not sweet. It's manly. It's tough. It's dominating. And I get in there and I do what I need to do. And like, I can understand that. It's a valid expression of sexuality, but I'm just saying maybe keep an open mind. There may be a sexual part of your personality that you haven't discovered yet, or that you could be capable of developing. The brain is extremely plastic and your sexuality can evolve over time. And of course, my most important advice here is for men who are not yet in a relationship, because if you feel that need for variety and you're scared about committing to a girl because you're worried that you're going to end up hurting her feelings, or you're going to be miserable because you're going to be suffering under this Coolidge effect, then you've got what I've called is that feeling of sexual debt. You've had so many feelings of wanting to sleep with women over the course of your life, particularly when you're a teenager, and so few experiences of actually fulfilling those desires, that before you actually commit to a partner, you may be well to just try and get it out of your system. I'm only saying this if you really feel like it's a problem for you personally, because I don't want to see you get in a relationship with a high quality woman and then resent her. Better that you slept with 5 women before you met her and you're like, okay, cool. I know that that's not fulfilling to me. I'm now happy to settle down with you. Because that's what happens. It's not like sleeping with lots of women actually fulfills you or satiates that desire. No, that's not what occurs. It's just that when you sleep with enough women, you realize that that desire can never be satiated, and then you naturally give it up. This may be terrible news to a bunch of guys, but you're going to need to grieve at some point, because this is the reality. There is no number of women that's ever going to completely satisfy you. You'll sleep with her, and then you'll still want somebody else. So even if you're engaging in lots of casual sex, don't think that at some point you're necessarily going to be satisfied. No, what's going to happen is that at some point you'll get bored. I'm sick of having these really intimate experiences with perfect strangers, with low quality women. I'm done with this. It's not working. It's not satisfying me. Let's actually look at the other alternative. Let's try monogamy with a really high quality woman. Now, will a part of you always be a bit upset, a bit unfulfilled because you're not engaging in sexual variety and novelty? Yes, but there's an appropriate emotional response for that. That's grief. Some guys in the audience listening to this might not be very familiar with the emotion of grief, but I encourage you to get familiar with it. Feel that emotion, process it. You know, it's painful, but you've got to deal with it. The danger of not grieving that loss is that you're going to sabotage a relationship that could have made you really happy, all because you weren't strong enough, you weren't masculine enough to actually confront the emotional reality of your internal world. Speaking of confronting emotional realities, I want to ask you a question. What do you think would be harder if a boyfriend saw a video of his girlfriend sleeping with another man, or if a girlfriend saw a video of her boyfriend being violent to another woman? Could a man ever really feel safe with his partner having seen with his own eyes what she was like with another man? And could a woman ever truly feel safe with a man seeing that he could be violent? That question brings with it so many interesting points of nuance with regards to the gender differences and how men and women have completely different experiences of the world. And it's the topic of my latest Patreon video, a conversation with Matt. It's about 45 minutes long. We go into a huge amount of depth. The Patreon videos are where a lot of the nuance are. The YouTube videos are a bit more short, a bit flashier. It's all kind of for the algorithm. But if you want to see me relaxed and really go into this stuff in depth, then please come and join me on Patreon. That's where the really good content is.